All right, I am back for some reason to talk about the Avengers some more. I have kind of made my thoughts clear on the ultimate future of the game and then the most recent Omega level threat mission. I have since tried it two more times with two different characters and run into the same problem every time where unless you have some crazy optimized build, you're just not going to be able to get past that boss. And then you will run into the issue of people just quitting when they wipe. I had people quit after two attempts at the boss, and then you just have no chance. So what I've been doing is I sort of just gave up on that mission, and I have been farming the 4x XP weekend for champion levels, and just kind of going back to the game to do more normal stuff that is not immensely frustrating, at least not in the same way, at the same level. Evie, what are you here for? Are you here to bother me that I didn't get you any merch? I'm sorry. It's coming. And I'm just kind of going back to playing the game in a more normal pace and trying to build out some of my weaker characters and things like that. And I am back to kind of creating a mental list in my head of what I think this game has struggled with since launch, which is almost a year ago, and can do to improve itself in the future. I'm not going to go into the whole, like, can this be saved, and, like, should this go free to play, and, like, all this stuff. Like, it's clear they're going to keep developing for it through at least the rest of this year with the Black Panther expansion, and then they have to do Spider-Man. They're, like, mandated to do Spider-Man. But if they do have any interest in, like, making this a coherent looter, I really, really think they need to focus on some of this stuff. And as someone who plays these kinds of games nonstop, these are the issues I keep running into with the game, kind of at a fundamental level. I've said many times that I think they've done a really solid job with a lot of the campaign stuff. I can see people diving in to play this for the free-to-play weekend right now and having a good time because the base campaign stuff is really kind of engaging and cool. And I think it's just fun to play as any of these characters. I think they're really well designed, and they've done, the Marvel characters justice in terms of, each one of these feel like they could be the star of their own game in terms of how they're designed. The problem is where everything falls apart is the looting aspect of this. And I think this extends beyond, like, loot has no cosmetic value and stuff. And, like, I'm not even going to touch on that again because, like, that ship has sort of sailed, and that's not really even something you can do at this point given how separated out loot and cosmetics are. The problems I run into with this is, like, for as many hours I put into this game, which is probably at least 250 hours at this point. I think last I looked on PlayStation, it was like 200, and that was a long time ago, so I probably put another 30, 40, 50 in by then. I just have no idea what I'm doing in the end game, which for me, as a person who is, well-versed in this genre, I feel like that's a problem because it all just seems so incoherent to me, and I have no idea at any given time, like, what I am necessarily going for, where reward sources are, and, like, what I'm kind of spending my time on. I think a prime culprit of this that I haven't really talked about that much is the war table. I think the war table is a absolutely, utterly confusing mess of a content distribution system. While Destiny has its little nodes and stuff on the map, like, the sheer randomness of the scattered points on the map of the war table makes this so confusing to anyone to figure out what you're really supposed to do. And what I'm having trouble running into now is, like, there have been so many changes to this game over the last year in terms of, like, what rewards what. Like, I am totally at a loss as to what I am supposed to be playing or going for in order to get specific, rewards. And pretty much all I want to work toward at this point are exotics. I want exotic sets for all my characters because that should have the highest stats and should have the best perks. That is not always true, which is another issue. And yet, past, like, one or two activities, I don't really even understand where it's possible to farm exotics. I know the Omega level threat is giving out to, can't beat that, so I have to go do the Mega Hive, which I know awards at least one or two a week, but only once a week. And then past that, I don't really know. I'm not sure if Tachyon, like the weekly Tachyon mission or the weekly featured story mission is supposed to give an exotic. I think I did those. Again, it's not even 100% easy to tell if you're doing the right thing there. And I have not gotten any exotics. I think Last Avengers Standing, like one of the kind of final super hive things you unlock after the campaign, has some sort of drop rate for those, and yet it's a 14 floor hive that you can do, and then you just might not get one. I just beat it with Iron Man a second ago, and I got some sort of Jarvis barrier, the yellow item, which is fine, I guess, but it was trash because it didn't have the range stat on it, and it wasn't an exotic. And I don't know what the drop rate is on that. I don't believe it is possible at all for exotics to drop in the wild. And so what it seems like it is right now is exotic is the highest tier that everyone wants, and yet it only comes from a ridiculously small pool of sources, and those sources are not farmable. You can only clear something like a Mega Hive or Omega level threat once a week, and you will get those rewards for one character. And this is a game that now has 8 characters, and with Black Panther, we'll have 9 characters in about 2 weeks here. And that just seems absurd to me because, like, I understand that most people may just focus on one hero, but like the whole point of this game and the whole point of developing other heroes is it should be easier to juggle around between heroes and to try and gear up everybody, because you're not only gearing up yourself a lot of the time, you're trying to gear up a team that can be controlled by AIs that are also powerful. So I read that they're running some sort of mission where like the exotic sources will be able to be looted 3 times a week, like for the next month or something, which like is an improvement, and yet like I do not understand why it is not once a week per character. And this is something I have been confused about quite literally since the game launched and exotics started existing in the first place. When the Mega Hive got here, that was originally like 8 sets of 6 floors or something absurd. So like I didn't even want to run that multiple times a week because it was just ridiculous. Now that's at least been cut in half to 4 sections, so that's more manageable, and that is something I would potentially run more than once. But like I don't understand the limits on this. Like it makes no sense to me why they are limiting exotic drops to this degree when that is like I'm trying to think of an example of this or another game, like a weekly allotment of exotics or something that could drop in Destiny, or you hit a cap on legendary set gear and outriders. Like it doesn't make any sense. Like if you want people to farm this game and to put playtime into this game, you have to get rid of these kind of absurd caps. And this is not a new problem. This has been around since the very beginning. The other issue is that just the way gear works, like I don't know what I am going for, not just in terms of where exotics are and how to get them, but what builds I'm really going for. Because a game, again, like Outriders, you have kind of a clear sense of what you're going for. There are sets where you get 3 items of the set to make a certain build. You can very easily see perks that synergize with one another. Destiny, you have mods you can switch in and out, and heavily focus on one type of thing, and it's all interchangeable, so you can kind of mix things up on the fly. And you're farming for things that have high stats or good specific perks on weapons, things like that. In Avengers, I don't know what I'm looking for. I really don't. Like there are sort of sets where like it's themed gear where like okay, there's like an exotic Tachyon set that drops from Tachyon missions, and also the Omega mission, I think, and then that has a bunch of Tachyon things and cosmic damage, so like that's kind of a thing you want to go for, but is that good on all characters? Like there are very few character specific perks. Some of the better exotics or better legendaries have those, and yet again it can be hard to know where exactly to find those. And when you do, they don't always synergize very well with each other. Like I just got, I beat the Mega Hive with Hulk this week, and I got like a Hulk chess piece that was all about like perfect dodging gives you, has a chance to give you a Jarvis barrier, and like increases the window for dodging, increases the distance you dodge. So like, yeah, all 3 of those perks synergized together, but it lowered my melee stat and upped my precision stat, which I did not want on Hulk. And why do I care about 3 different dodge-based stats on my ultra tank Hulk who doesn't really need to dodge stuff? Like things like that. Like I just don't understand why gear like that exists, and like I don't really get what I'm going for in terms of like how to complete a coherent set in Avengers. And like this is after a long time of playing this game. Like to be at this point where I still don't fully understand what's going on is not great. Balance is really weird in this, which is something I guess I didn't really understand until the Omega level threat. I have all my characters between like 145 and 150, I think, except Hawkeye. I'll get to that in a second, but so like nothing in the game has been hard. So I sort of stopped farming because I'm like, what am I even farming for when I'm cruising through Mega Hives at whatever the supposed max difficulty is. Like I have really good builds on all these characters, like even if I don't have them fully kitted out in exotics. So like who cares? And then of course the Omega level threat comes along, and like even that is like it. The first 2/3 of that are just kind of like normal, missions with annoying modifiers, but like totally easy to get through with a normal high-powered character. And then you get to the boss that is has a just absurd amount of health and has a bazillion kind of screen covering moves that can one or two shot you, no matter what your build is, no matter what your character is, goes through Jarvis berries, whatever. And so really the only way to beat that is to have just an absurd amount of patience and luck and like constantly be dodging, reviving your teammates to get all the way through the fight, which you will fail like 99 times out of 100. Or to have like one of these just super crazy builds that usually revolve around like Thor or Iron Man or something, where you just stack kind of an absurd amount of damage buffs on top of one another and like chain all these heroics and triggers and stuff to essentially burst down the boss in anywhere from like 20 to 60 seconds. And that way you avoid pretty much all of his actually difficult phases. So like there's this yawning chasm in terms of difficulty where like the people who have stuck around and like totally min-maxed everything to the point where they can one-shot any boss, like are not being challenged by the most challenging content in the game, and yet the other 95% of players that get to that point that have not gotten the super optimized Thor build or whatever it is, are unable to even like remotely have a chance at beating it, even if the rest of the game is kind of cake. So like there has really been no level of difficulty balancing going on. And I would say most things need a buff, and yet if you have builds that can one-shot essentially the hardest boss in the game in a tiny amount of time, 15, 20 seconds, like something is going wrong there, and you have calculated damage incorrectly, shall we say, or you have forgotten to put in maybe some immunity gates so you can't just burst through every phase a boss has instantly. So that's something I think needs to be taken a look at. In terms of new characters, I think a big problem the game has had for a long time too is the gap between kind of your character hitting character level 50, where you unlock all your moves and stuff, and that is a very speedy process that feels good because you're moving through it really quickly. And then the problem is the process to get to 150 gear score is absurd. It just, you don't, there's no real clear path on how to get there. It's essentially just like running hives over and over again to get high, at a higher level than what you're supposed to be doing in order to get the highest kind of max cap drops, and then just doing that over and over and over and over until you fill out kind of every slot. The game doesn't really explain to you that it's only calculating your base level, and if you sink resources into upgrading lower gear, it's essentially a waste because it's not helping you get higher drops, and you will need those resources later. That is something I learned very early on that is the game still does not explain. So this is why, I've left Hawkeye at like, I don't know, gear score 70 or something since he came out. Because I'm like, okay, well, they're going to be having new content over the course of the next few months here, so maybe I can level him up doing that. Can't do that. The Monica mission came out, and you need ranged DPS to even beat it, or else she will insta-wipe you. I tried to beat it with Hawkeye, and it was physically impossible because he wasn't remotely geared for that. And then obviously he can't do the Omega level threat. So like there's essentially been nothing he's been able to do. So if I want to level up Hawkeye, I would just have to go grind a bunch of hives or something like over and over, which that is a very boring process. And I mentioned this to Crystal Dynamics, and they said that maybe something in the future will help bridge that gap, but this does seem like something we will be going through with Black Panther again. I guess in that case, at least there will probably be new Wakanda stuff to do. But for people trying to, get alternate characters up to a higher level, it's not a fun process because you are not, it's just like a time gate where you're not going to keep any of this gear you're getting until you get base level 130 gear. So everything is a waste, and you're just chasing a number for hours and hours and hours, and just trying to get, RNG for the right drops to get higher. So this is not a good system, and nothing really about it has changed since launch. So these are all kind of what I view as the structural problems of the game. Unclear ways to get loot and not enough sources that are not farmable enough. Builds that are confusing to assemble, and you don't really know what you're going for in terms of just like mega stacking one stat and maybe a specific type of damage. Like it is, it's very difficult to really even understand what a good build is in this game. Difficulty balancing for endgame content, grind balancing for lower level characters trying to catch up. This is all kind of fundamentals that a lot of other games get right, and maybe they have problems with content droughts or this and that, but Avengers is just getting a lot of the basics wrong, and a lot of this seems somewhat easily correctable. Like, I don't know why exotic lockouts have been a problem for 11 months now. No idea why that's the case, or why they care if people overfarm exotics at this point. Doesn't make any sense to me. Other stuff might require more of an overhaul, like, making gear better. Just, it's very general, but that is obviously a huge problem. And they have really not really given an indication that they are planning some sort of giant loot overhaul or anything. They're just kind of making small adjustments. So again, I think they need to get these fundamentals right before they just keep adding more and more content. I don't think necessarily a lack of content is the problem. It is a problem maybe, and that may be fixed in part by Wakanda. But after that, like, it's not just about getting out more heroes, getting out more missions. Like, they have to fix the fundamentals of this game as a looter. So I've done videos or articles like this in the past, but they don't really get listened to. Like, I've talked to Crystal Dynamics one-on-one, and I've said a lot of this stuff, but they're just so busy kind of working on the content that they don't really seem to get around to this kind of stuff. But I'm hoping they do someday, and I guess we'll see. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.